Welcome to the Crypto Podcast. You can find all our episodes on thecryptopodcast.org. We're also on BitChute and YouTube. You'll find the links in the podcast description. I forward a podcast, the meditation, the awakening, exposing fraud and corruption, but with solutions, the Learn Polish and the Speaking Podcast, as well as being a podcasting coach. You'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster. My guest today in Australia, I'd say a successful serial entrepreneur, co-founder and CEO of ShareRing. Is that the way it's pronounced? Please welcome right. Tim Boss.
Thanks, Roy. It's great to be here.
No problem. So, I mean, you're a serial entrepreneur, but you might just introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started my first business in around 2004. Before that, I worked for, actually, my first real job was in the video games industry. I had the best job in the world of playing video games for a living. While I was at university. So I'd finish my uni and I'd go straight to work and I'd spend 4 hours playing computer games and report on bugs and stuff. But I worked my way up in that company and ended up being the general manager of their IT infrastructure over about 4 years. So it was a really good transition from playing games to having a nice corner office in that company. And then I while I was working for that company, I actually had a very obviously a deep interest in technology and all that sort of stuff, but I used to run a little sort of side gig doing network cabling and setting up computer systems and stuff for small businesses. And my day job was running a large sort of IT infrastructure for a games company, and then the night job was helping small businesses. And that was around 1997. And then I left that company and started working in consulting, worked for a Microsoft Avanade joint venture. And then after, I think it was around 2004, I basically got together with this guy and we were talking about sort of new technology around GPS tracking and cloud services and all of that. And that's when my first company was started. So I left Avanade at the time and started that, got some funding for that, sold that in around 2008, and then licensed the technology back to a new company in 2010, ran that for a while, and then started a car sharing company in 2012, and then the rest is history. I mean, that sort of moved on to me starting ShareRing in around 2018. And I guess my background in blockchain, I've always been fascinated with the whole concept of distributed computing, and from in the 90s I built one of the first sort of distributed render farms for rendering 3D artwork around the time that Toy Story came out. And I used to run SETI, and in 2010 I came across Bitcoin and I started sort of mining that just out of interest of the technology. Then in 2016, I think it was, I came across the Ethereum white paper, and for me that changed my world. It really sort of showed what you could really do with the power of decentralized computing. So not just sort of blockchain, this whole concept of this idea of a virtual machine or virtual computer that could actually be decentralized, was distributed amongst a lot of untrusted computers. And that for me, basically, I saw that, and it took a little while to sink in, but I started to see how it could change many industries, and how we could leverage that in a lot of problems that we sort of saw around identity and things like that. And that's where ShareRing was started in 2018.
Okay. And I suppose, the fact that you've got the history and you're kind of fully transparent, you can see on the different social media platform, because a lot of the time there's so many different rug pulls, there's so many startups that it's just kind of, no one knows what to trust and everything. And I think when you actually can follow somebody along the route, you don't see people like that are actually doing the rug pulls.
It's quite funny is, you see, sometimes we undershare, sometimes we don't share enough information, and often that's because we're very busy inside and we're focused internally on building the business, and people get suspicious about that and wondering what we're hiding, and they start coming up with FUD and all this sort of stuff. And we've got this very strong principle of transparency within the company and also outside of the company, and we believe that I always enjoy when people ask hard questions. I enjoy when people say to me, why was this token transferred? Or people say, what have you done with this? And I always sort of try to answer it as honestly as possible and come and really forthright in those responses. And I think it's important when building a business that has a public face like this and has stakeholders with people that are effectively token holders that want to see a utility out of those tokens.
Excellent. So, I mean, I've looked at a lot of the videos and the different things that you can do, but I suppose it's probably best that you just explain the whole business for those that either get the app and, you know, both for a business and an individual.
Sure. I mean, at the core of what we've got is something that we call the sharing vault. And in its most simplest terms, the sharing vault is like what I call the digital me. And what that basically means is it's a self-sovereign storage of information about me. So it's like a digital identity, but it can store much more than that. So it can store things like my medical certificates, graduation certificates. It can store things like information about me that's not necessarily verifiable. It could be my shoe size or things like that. But also it stores factual information about me, such as my name, my date of birth. And we use sort of things like driver's license, NFC passports, and all of that around sort of based on a certain trust frameworks around the world to be able to allow you to be in a position to prove something about yourself. So if you look at I guess our vision and mission, I guess our long-term vision is this whole world of frictionless interactions, but where data privacy and trust is at the core of it. So at the moment, you've got a lot of centralized databases of information about you in Google and things like that. And over time, that's proving to be less and less secure. And we tend to overshare information about ourselves and give information to everyone about ourselves. So we want to be able to put the control back into the user's hands, but also use that control to provide frictionless access to various goods and services, right? So our mission is really around removing friction from those everyday interactions, but also allow users to have this highest level of security, trust, ownership, and control of their personal information. And that's really important for us in terms of that trust and that control of personal info. And that's really where the guts of the sharing vault comes into it. So the vault is itself a storage mechanism, but it also exists as an SDK. And we've got an app, which is the sharing app, that allows you to interact with various services. And then we've also written a query language so you can query information in the vault to say, ask a question of someone. And it might be, how old are you? Or it could be, are you over 18? So a zero knowledge type of question as well. So it's part of building this greater ecosystem that's based around that vault.
Okay. And I mean, there's a load of different things that I've seen on it, but say one, because I worked in construction all my life, and I saw that it could be used for work sites, which can actually, because what happens, especially when it's a big site, you have people going in there pretending just to rob tools and things like that. So it could be used in a great way like that. Does it always have to have somebody that's actually scanning it, or can it actually be like a barrier that you go through and you scan it and the barrier only turns if you've got the code?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's made, one of the core principles of what we've developed here is that it's infinitely scalable and flexible. So what we've basically done is we've created this SDK, but we've also created this query language, and you could effectively embed that query language into hardware like a gantry, for example. So you might have a QR code on that gantry and you scan the QR code, gantry opens up, or vice versa. You might have the QR on your phone, the gantry scans that and lets you in. And same premise as like a ticket booth at a concert or something like that, or a sports game, where you've got a QR on your phone, you scan it and it lets you in through that. So you could use that. Construction's an interesting one because you could also basically have not just access privileges for workers, but it may be checking to see whether or not they're updated with their induction as well. So maybe they need to go through induction. They can't access the site without having to do induction, or maybe they need to prove that they've got the qualifications or something like that to be able to enter that work site. If they're working for, say, one of the larger construction companies that assign bodies instead of named sort of people.
Yeah, no, because I mean, like, the health and safety is a big one, and you have to do, you have to be certified to get on a lot of the sites, and to have that and the showing that it's updated. I can see the advantage for the employer in that sense. Plus, also, like in the likes of, say, Intel and places like that, where they're an existing factory, but there's also construction site because they're just constantly doing extensions and stuff like that, just to have only certain people have the access to the thing, rather than, because I mean, obviously they've got big bucks, but not every place does. They're watching the pennies. And if each thing is like more of a code to give access, it saves a lot of the funds needed.
True. And what's interesting is I have conversations like this with people in so many different industries, and I'm yet to come across one or a person that doesn't say, hey, I've got a background in this. This is where it could be used, or this would be amazing. And one of the challenges we've got is we've built obviously this incredibly flexible product, and we don't want to try to boil the ocean in terms of trying to sort of focus on too many areas at once also. So I guess an important part of what we've done is, instead of what our previous sort of task or goal was, is to sort of focus on, trying to get consumers and build all of that up. What we've actually done is stepped back a lot from that and look for businesses to partner with, to sort of integrate with our SDK and all that, but also now launching this product where we can allow other businesses to build directly on top of our blockchain using our tools as well. So you may have a company that's focusing on the construction industry. They could build using the ShareRing Vault, which is this common identity platform, and actually build a platform around that specifically for the construction industry. So we become quite passive in that. We don't have to build a construction product. We can let a construction industry company build that, and we provide this underlying foundation of allowing people to build on top of it.
Yeah, excellent. And like, I can see the advantages for concerts, whether it's sporting events or anything, because with all the touts, like, it's bad enough that they gazump the price, but unfortunately they're selling the same ticket 500 times, and people are giving hard-earned money and realize it's not even working. So I see the advantage to that. But I had an interesting call this week with a friend of mine, and he basically, his phone smashed as he was heading to an event. So he yeah, so this, and like, I mean, when you look at that, it's kind of like a Mr. Bean situation. But the other side is, like, a lot of people's, the battery goes, because before you actually, they post you, whether it's Ticketmaster or whoever, they post you the actual ticket. Like, is there systems in place? I know it's not really your kind of issue, but at the end of the day, it's like, some people, they like to have, like this guy said, he keeps all his tickets of all the concerts he goes to because it's just his thing. And they don't send that, they seem to be stopping that as well. But when we've got technology failures, how do we overcome that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, we've always looked at that, and I think for companies like ticketing companies or venues and things like that, there always needs to be a workaround or a backup plan. And sometimes that backup plan is simply to make sure you've got your ID, go to the ticket booth, I'll print out a ticket for you, and then you go straight in. And that's what happens now. And it's a decent workaround. The interesting thing is the feedback that I generally get around this is the majority of people are arriving with fully charged phones that work. The biggest challenge you have at those venues, though, is the mobile service is terrible. So a lot of people don't download their ticket until they get to that venue. So part of what we looked at in terms of as a general service is the ability so that the system will still work when there's no network as well. So when you say present a QR code to access something, then you can do it without sort of a network. So those are the sort of things that you need to consider, the things that we call the edge cases when you design any software. And once we sort of when a ticketing company chooses to integrate with our platform, then that's the sort of thing that they would also need to think about, and that's part of the experience that we have in that area, where we can discuss that with them and prove and show them how they can do it.
And I mean, I'm not big into having to give my fingerprints and biometrics, but if you go to America, you don't have a choice. You kind of have to go through all that. Is that something that could be kind of incorporated when you do have a technical issue, that you just put your fingerprint on their device or retina display or something like that? Is that something that could be done?
Not necessarily. And one of the reasons why is that relies on centralized data or centralized information. So as ours is self-sovereign, there is still this requirement for you to be holding something that contains your digital identity. And that at the moment, that is the ShareRing Vault within a mobile phone. So you still do need a mobile phone app to be able to do it. And actually within our app, when you're asked a question, and it may be what's your ticket number or what's your age or something like that, it actually asks you for your biometrics to prove that it's you and no one's stolen your phone to access that event or building or whatever it is you're accessing. So, I mean, I guess the easy answer to that is no. But if you look at things like, say, the European Union, their eIDAP in version 2, they're very, very strongly veering towards this whole concept of self-sovereign identity. And their view of digital ID is very similar to ours in terms of this broad term of a digital me. And it's not just your passport or driver's license, it's everything about you. It's all the information about you. And that needs to be in the control of the holder or the bearer of that information.
And I mean, like you're saying that it's basically, I have all my own information. Obviously, when you're putting in the password or your passport and things like that, that's something that you would have. But like, say, medical information or any other kind of thing like that is just specific to me. Is there a way that can be kind of hacked? Or if you decide to sell on and the bad boys buy your company, there's no way around it the way that the technology is done?
Bad boys will get nothing. They could buy our company and they'll still get nothing. So some of the principles of what we've got is this whole self-sovereign is number one, it's tamper-proof. So if even the holder can't change the information in there of verified information, so they can't go into their passport and change their date of birth or something like that. But the other one is, one of our principles is we hold no data about our users. The only information we hold about them is their email address and their name, and that's it. So if we were hacked, or if someone bought us or something like that, they'd actually get nothing. There's no honeypot for them to go for. And the only way that they would be able to potentially hack people is either social engineering each person one by one. That's it. They would only be able to get access to one person at a time. There's no sort of single database of everyone's information at all. It just doesn't exist.
And when, just say, somebody changes a device, a phone number or something like that, loses the phone, is it just they log in and their ID, their face ID brings all the information back? Or is it like a kind of meta max where you put in your 20 recovery code?
Yeah, good question. So right now, as the platform is, when you sign up, you're asked to do that 24-digit or 24-word recovery phrase. So one of the things that we're doing as a design change right now is actually moving that recovery phrase to only the point where you back up your vault, because that's the only time it's really needed, is the backup portion, so that when you restore it. So think of the vault as like a file that's built around, say, a database. And when you install it for the first time, you do all your ID and you add all of your information, and then you're requested to back that information up. So you choose either a local drive or a cloud drive to back it up. So you can back it up on your own personal Google Cloud or iCloud or something like that. And that's backed up, and you've got your recovery phrase that you save somewhere safe. And then if you lose your phone, someone steals it or something like that, all you need to do is install the app, choose the location you backed it up, put your 24-word phrase in there, and then you're ready to go. And another thing that we're pushing out of our R&D, which I've been testing now, is basically a social recovery method. So if you don't have the 24-word passphrase, or you've lost it or something like that, you can actually have a few trusted friends to scan a QR that will then recover your 24-word phrase as well. So that means that, once again, we as a company don't become a honeypot or a target for hackers where we're storing passphrases or something like that, because we're simply not. We use it's all completely self-sovereign once again.
Because that was always my fear, because they're, no matter what system you're using, you're getting your 12 or 24 phrase, and you're like, And I was just wondering, is it possible? Because I have often thought of that. Just say, for example, I have it stored here, and then I'm going somewhere else, and something happens that I know I can't access that. But why? Maybe it's a strange question, but why can't I create my own 12 or 24 password? Because if I can create a story that nobody would really know, or go through a journey in my house or something like that, that I could have, just like, say, when you're learning the colors, Richard of York gave battle in vain, things like that, that you could create something like that. Whereas sometimes it's like, even if you try that, it is so weird, the words that you're getting.
There's a good reason why. So basically, the words are part of a BIP39 set of words. So they're a predefined set of words that exist, and it's actually funny enough, it's only the first three or four letters of those words that are actually unique. The rest of the letters don't really matter. But you could technically, I guess you could pick from that list of words, and I can't remember the number of words that are in that list. You could pick and choose a list of words from that list. But if it's going to make a sentence, there's a higher chance that if other people were to choose it, that it's going to be used already, if you know what I mean. Like if you've got everyone trying to choose easy to remember sentences that they feel that is unique to them, the fact that it forms a sentence, which in itself is unique based on the limited word set, is probably going to mean that it's easier to hack. In fact, there was a site a while ago that allowed you to do that. It allowed you to choose the words and things like that. And I saw some research about 6 months ago that said exactly that. It increases the chance of hacking because it's like guessing passwords. You guess common words, and you guess letters replacing numbers and things like that. And that's how you can brute force sort of passwords.
Okay. So I just see it since I moved to Poland. When people are submitting CVs, they have, about the GDPR kind of thing, and I give you access. And I saw one of the videos where you're able to send it to, say, the employer. You might kind of explain that a bit more.
Yeah, so part of what we've done really considers privacy rules around things like GDPR, right? So a lot of countries have got their own privacy rules, and GDPR seems to be one of the most stringent. And there's a bunch of things around GDPR. Number one, we don't store any information about people, so that makes it easy for us to say that we comply with most parts of GDPR. The other part is that you control your data. So if I'm, let's say, applying for a job or accessing a business or something like that, one of, as I said earlier, the principles that we have is to share as little as possible. But what you also have that right to ask that company to remove your information as well later on. So the other thing that we can do, which is even better for GDPR, is if somebody wants to know something about you, such as are you over 18, or have you graduated from university, you can answer the question with yes or no instead of oversharing your information with that company and potentially causing a security risk for you and for the data that's stored within that company. So we can actually create this mechanism where a question is asked by a company, say, have you got a bachelor's degree? And the answer can simply be yes. And that's it. And they trust that information because of the mechanism and because of the way that we actually provide that information. We don't have to send the degree with it. We just send the fact that you do have a bachelor's degree. That means that company hasn't actually received any specific information about you, so there's no GDPR issues there.
And for a situation like that, it would be mainly the employer would be the one that would be kind of engaging with this. And then when they're advertising, that they would, because not everybody would be obviously aware of
100%. Yeah. We're actually releasing very, very soon some sample websites that show a few different use cases of exactly that. So, a good example, it might be an employer. They have a website, say, apply now for this job. They have a QR code, and that QR code is behind that QR code is a query, and that query, which what we call our vault query language, and that query might say, what's your first name, what's your last name, what's your phone number or email address, and do you have a bachelor's degree? And someone can grab their phone and they scan that QR code on their phone. They say, oh, this is the information. Yes, use my fingerprint. Yes, I do want to send that information to them. And that would go to that company as part of your job application or something like that. So it's a nice, seamless way. And the beauty of that is ShareRing aren't a middleman in that transaction. It's a transaction that occurs directly between you and that company. So we have a feed where it goes from that QR directly through that company's API. It goes onto their storage, and they have direct access to that. And we never see it. We don't have any access to that at all. So it's that effectively peer-to-peer sharing of information, where we don't need to be the arbiter of that information. We don't need to sit in the middle and make decisions on whether or not something's correct or not. We basically remove ourselves from that and provide the underlying infrastructure.
Yeah. And you mentioned when you kind of learned about Ethereum. So what system are you using for? Is it like Ethereum, Polygon, like, or is there any?
So we initially in 2018 we built on top of what was the Tendermint framework then, and which has subsequently become the Cosmos ecosystem. So we're part of the Cosmos ecosystem. So the beauty about Cosmos is they really promote this whole idea of application-specific blockchains. So for us, we see ourselves as the identity blockchain. So where, you know, this whole concept of digital me can exist within that blockchain, and it occurs that what we've developed works just as well in a Web3 sense for accessing things like metaverses, DeFi platforms, and all that, as it does in real world, in a physical and also Web2 sort of environment as well.
And I see as well, like connecting with, say, merchant services with payments and things like that, because I think it's kind of connecting with them and making the existing providers. But you might talk with that, but also one that, is there a way of actually creating an alternative? Because I look at how much they actually charge, you know, usually about 3%. And yeah, when you're buying something small, you don't really think about it. But I mean, they do that with stuff that's even 100,000 as well. And PayPal use really tricky techniques with currency exchange, you know, that they can take up to 10% at times.
Yeah, and you could also do things like overlay some rules around the payment system. So you could use our system to say, somebody is trying to buy alcohol, for example, and you could develop a system that basically says, okay, scan this to pay. So you scan it, use your fingerprint, and then it turns out you're not over 18 or 21 or wherever the legislation is. So it doesn't let you continue or complete that transaction. The beauty of that is that the person behind the counter, you don't have to pull out your ID, show them this information that has your date of birth, your full name, your address, and all this. You've simply scanned a QR code. You've used your fingerprint to prove that it's you. And the process of it has made a decision as to whether or not you're entitled to purchase that alcohol or whatever it is. And you could do that in scenarios where you're, say, entering a nightclub or something like that as well. But for payment, I think there's really good opportunity around that, around actually sending or piggybacking a question or information about yourself with that payment.
That's actually a brilliant system, because there's so much aggression that happens as well when, especially when somebody's not the age or they have their fake ID. You know, that eliminates a lot of that, like, and totally, which is stressful for the actual, you know, the employee that's actually doing the transaction.
Same with delivery services. So things like alcohol delivery services. So it's at the point of ordering it where that evidence can be provided, so that there's no issue between the delivery person and the customer.
Okay. And I saw another one with the traveling, so how it can kind of speed up and all that. So you might delve a bit into that.
Yeah, there's a lot of touch points in travel that we saw. So we started sort of developing this platform around travel, and it's part of what I said earlier about us stepping back and saying, hang on, we've got this foundation and this infrastructure, and we can actually work with other companies for them to build their existing travel platforms into our identity system. So that's part of sort of what our goals are at the moment. Now, touch points for travel, there's heaps. You could simplify the whole process of booking flights and doing those pre-checks where you've got to enter all your passport details. Imagine just scanning a QR or tapping a button on your phone and it sends that data without you having to enter it. You could use it for things like checking into hotels. So you could check into a hotel before you even get there and send only the required information to the hotel, instead of them grabbing your passport, walking into the back room to photocopy it and do whatever else with it. And yeah,
and that's a serious risk. That's a fantastic advantage just on that, because I always cringe when I see that. It's like, I'm putting my trust on that's like the person taking your credit card doing a transaction when they walk away, as opposed to point of sale.
Yeah. Actually, I do this interesting thing. So whenever I give my email out, my personal email, which is a Gmail address, whenever I give that out, there's a little function within Gmail where you can actually put a plus and then any word after that. So your Gmail address, like it might be, let's say it's roy@gmail.com. You can actually go Roy plus cryptopodcast@gmail.com. And that can be sort of any word. So what I actually do is whenever I sign up to a service or even give my email at a hotel, I do that. I do plus and then write the hotel name or the date or something that actually makes it recognize it. And when I start getting spam, unsolicited emails, I can see exactly where they've come from. So I can know where the leaks are. And you'd be amazed at where some of these leaks are. And I can say there have been some hotels where I've entered my details and I have received random spam that's been a result of that. There's been big companies that I've signed up for where I've received random spam from other companies that are unrelated to them because of the signing up for that. It's incredible.
Wow. So, like, I see so many advantages for a load of the different things that we've just discussed. I mean, at the end of the day, time is precious. And instead of filling all these things, so you just speed up the process is brilliant. But because I know that I've seen stuff on, say COVID passports and stuff like that, codes. And if I look at then, say, the Chinese system, the social credit score system, that they get to a system where they go, oh, you're a bad boy, you crossed the street. Oh, you're not allowed to travel. You're not allowed to do this. So there's the disadvantage then of being used against it. And that's why I think there's a kickback to some people. They don't actually see advantages as opposed to they're looking at, oh, we're going to lose our autonomy.
Yeah, in fact, I guess that comes back to what I was saying before around there's this thing about oversharing of information, and oversharing of information can lead to things like social credit systems and all that sort of stuff. So when we put the control, a lot of people are scared of this whole idea of digital ID. And the reason why is because they think that it's going to end up being something like a social credit system or monitoring or things like that. But when you mix it with this whole concept of self-sovereign, where it only exists on my phone and I have complete control, I choose who I want to share it with, which also means that I can make a value or a trust-based decision as to whether or not when I say decide to share it with company ABC, I've still got a choice whether or not I want to share that information with them. They don't automatically get it, and it's not shared with them by the government or anything like that. It's me that actually shares it. So I'm the instigator of that process. So we believe very, very strongly in control, right? And we believe very strongly in my identity is me and I own my identity. So, for us, I understand those fears, and I feel that what we're putting in place actually helps remove a lot of those fears and puts the control back into the bearer of the ID.
And because when I saw that, I was thinking at the start when I was doing my research, the sovereignty, because it's something that I've delved deep into myself. And on my other podcast, The Awakening, I've had a lot of guests on it, concerning kind of UCC, common law and sovereignty. And when I kind of see the trickery based on your name, the all capital name and everything, and I've used it, I'm actually winning against the city and everything. So I kind of see, is it something that you can kind of build deeper with that it's the sovereign person and building the community? Because especially in Australia, there's a lot of people that are doing courses and they're actually realizing this, the fraud in money and everything, everything that's kind of done to us is total control, and we're not born free people anymore. You're kind of born it depends on what you actually believe in. There's kind of born under admiral law and all this kind of stuff, but there's definitely trickery that's done against us. And I'm just wondering, is that something that you can kind of incorporate?
I mean, I won't go into sort of my thoughts and beliefs in that area at all, but I mean, I guess it's easy to confuse the term things like sovereign citizen and how people use that with this idea of self-sovereign with regards to the identity. So with us, self-sovereign basically means I own it, I control it, I choose who I share it with. It's not really a comment or anything on the idea where a sovereign citizen doesn't have to abide by certain rules or taxes or things like that. And when they're in their home, that's their kingdom and all of that sort of stuff. So it's not really a comment about that, and it's not really designed to help or not help that. We've got this broader view, and the broader view is really focused around that digital me and the fact that I own that digital me, and I don't want to have it stored on a Google server or a Facebook server or Microsoft or anything like that. So that's really where our core focus is in that area.
And I think, in the last few years, the amount of people, because there's even been a few books written about it, even TikTok and all these other things where they're coming out exposing what's done with your information. And, when you realize you can do a search and you can find out on Google, on Facebook, what they have about you, it's actually scary. Like, you're realizing, they know more than I know myself, so I actually love what you're doing. So finally, like, say the social platforms and all that, because I see you've got, with Twitter and different things, you're doing some of them very well. You've got 20 odd thousand, 26, 27,000, but great engagement, because you, like, I always look at things like that, you can see sometimes it's zero. I mean, it doesn't really work much for me with the Twitter. Some of the platforms do, but I'm just wondering, with yourselves, what are you finding is actually helping?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, for me, I'm terrible at social media. I created a Twitter account in 2016 and I think tweeted 3 or 4 times over the next 4 years. So and I'm generally, in the past, I've been a very private person, and even with companies that I've started, I've often chosen a CEO that I brought someone in as a CEO that I work with that can be the front of the company, and where I can just focus on the tech, because that's where my interest is, building the tech. And in this scenario, it's a lot different. I'm forced to come out. So yeah, I think I'm inconsistent with my tweets. And one of the things that I don't do is engage in dialogue where I share strong opinions on something one way or another. And I think that often helps, because we focus on the facts about what we're building and what we're doing and all that sort of stuff. And with the company, we've got a great marketing team. They're awesome. They do a great job getting the word out there. They have a lot of great updates that they do. We're moving to a new Discord soon, so that we can actually be a little bit more so we can actually communicate directly a little bit more with people that are building on our platform as well. So we've got a forum where we can set up separate channels where we can actually have technical channels where people have got technical questions and all that sort of stuff. And then we've also got a great group of community managers. So these guys are volunteers. They help us out. They've been with us for years, and they help manage and monitor the Telegram and the Reddit account and things like that as well. And I'm extremely thankful for the assistance that they've provided.
Yeah, excellent. Listen, Tim, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So you might let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. That's great.
So they'll find you on the website. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry. So ShareRing.network is the website. So it's share ShareRing .network, and then our Twitter is I think you're probably going to put it down there, aren't you?
Yeah. I'll include it both in the audio.
My personal Twitter is at the real Tim Boss, and then our Telegram is at ShareRing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Tim. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, Roy. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's all for the Crypto Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on thecryptopodcast.org. As mentioned, we're on BitChute and YouTube. You'll find my other podcasts along with the podcast coaching, bio.link/podcaster. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. Really helps. Until next week, take care.